guys, Chauncey Phillips here. Welcome to my March 8th DVD update, where I talk about all the DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Like I always say, you guys, if you enjoy these updates, definitely give me a thumbs up. Leave me comments below what you guys thought of the titles I checked out. Any future titles you suggest I check out for future updates. Also, if you guys haven't seen it yet, check out the link below to see my all horror movie, DVD Blu-ray update I just posted like 2 days ago. Now, the first one that I got from Paramount is the Chris Rock, Rosario, Dawson film, Top 5. And this has got a lot of people in this, and some cameos and little bigger roles like Tracy Morgan, Kevin Hart, Sherry Shepherd, Cedric the Entertainer, which I thought his part was really funny in this. And it's basically about Chris Rock, and he's basically playing this actor, sort of like himself a little bit, and then kind of like other actors too, who have kind of done really big things, went to do some really big movies that everyone kind of talked about, then kind of dropped off and kind of started doing kind of dumb movies, and movies that really were not like what they used to do, and were not really getting great attention for doing them, and kind of were being made fun of, or kind of looked down upon for like their choices and things like that. And that's basically where he is in his career now, and he wants to get back into doing stand-up and hopefully get into some better movies. And he gets like an interview request from Rosario Dawson. And it's basically something that would usually be done and finished in like an hour or less, but it ends up he gets really interested in her and likes the kind of questions she's asking and things like that. So that's basically the movie. It's about him going around New York and around for the day, interviewing her and talking to her and kind of like getting to know her and things like that. And it's kind of an interesting movie. I thought it was actually really well done, and I feel like it's one of those movies too that was really good, that not a lot of people saw and just didn't get that much attention. It has on here commentary with Chris Rock and J.B. Smoove, Andre Allen, stand-up outtakes and deleted scenes. The next one from Lionsgate. This is one of those movies where I feel like the second half of this movie is where like a lot of stuff's really going to happen, because it's they split the movie up into two. It's kind of like a big build-up, and right when the movie ends is right where things are going to start to really happen and big things. But then it ends since it's split up. And this is the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, and I really like both of the Hunger Games. The other two Hunger Games films as well. I was really surprised with how much I liked them. I also like Divergent, which they have a trailer for of the Part 2 of that, Insurgent. But I really like this movie. It's kind of hard to explain it, but it's basically though following up right after the last film and about Countess's character and Jennifer Lawrence's character and what's happened to her and what happened to her other friends, and kind of they've gone their one way and kind of been like taken, and Josh Hutcherson's character is kind of telling Countess's, Jennifer Lawrence's character to come over with them, and because they want Jennifer Lawrence to kind of join this group and be like the head of it, to kind of like be the face of the rebellion, and Josh Hutcherson's character kind of looks weird, almost like he's being forced into saying, "Don't do this, Countess," and that's not a good thing, and that kind of stuff. That's basically what it is, and about them kind of trying to get her to be the face of this, and kind of agreeing that if she helps be the face of it, they'll go and rescue the friends, from the last half that have gone missing. That's essentially what it is, and it's kind of like stops, right where you kind of wish it kept going. But like I said, I like this movie, really looking forward to the next half, but it has on here, a commentary, the making of Part 1, making of Mockingjay Part 1 documentary, and then a tribute to Philip Seymour Hoffman, and a music video segment and deleted scenes. But like I said, I really like this. There's also like a lot of different editions of this, like Steelbooks, I believe, and like I believe Target, Best Buy, and Walmart all have like different stuff with their editions. The next one's from Sony. This is one of those ones I know I saw as a kid, but like to me, when I think of like these kind of movies about like a troop of like kids like going out in the woods, and like this one isn't as much of that kind of woods kind of stuff, but I always think of Bushwhacked. But this is Shelley Long and Troop Beverly Hills. Like I said, I haven't seen this movie in years. I know I saw this as a kid. It has a really great opening animation segment that John Kay, from Ren and Stimpy did, and I always love when movies had that. Like they had did one like that for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I think one of the City Slickers movies. A couple of different ones. It was kind of big to do like in the late 80s, early 90s. It was kind of like the thing that they were doing a lot. And this one, had also had this cool like Beach Boys song, and their music always fit cool in movies. Like when they always like did these original songs, like the openings and things like that. I also should say too, this looks really good and has on here, never before seen deleted scenes and a new thing interviewing Shelley Long about the movie. But it's basically though about Shelley Long's character, who's like, it's all set in Hollywood, and she's like lives in Beverly Hills and has a lot of money, but she's basically in the midst of getting divorced from her husband, and she wants to head up her daughter's, Girl Scout troop. They can't call it the Girl Scout. They have their own name for it in this. But she wants to head it up. And the other members of the group, the other chapters and things like that, really don't think she's a perfect fit and kind of want her to fail and kind of like laughing at her because she doesn't really know much about the woods and all that kind of stuff. She doesn't really know any of that kind of stuff, but she kind of makes it her own and kind of comes up with her own kind of badges and things like that. But it's, one of the other troop leaders, it's kind of hoping she fails and sending in a spy to come into the group, could kind of like take pictures of what she's doing wrong and things like that. I like this movie though. It's a fun, late 80s kind of movie, has a real 80s feel to it, and a lot of cool, 80s music and things like that. The next one is one that I haven't watched in years because to me, it's one of those movies like on the list of things like Bicentennial Man and like The Electric Grandmother and like other like ones where they're so sad and upsetting to me, I can't watch them very much. Like I haven't watched this one in years. I used to watch this as a kid, but this is one of those movies like I feel like a lot of people is almost like their first interaction with like death in a movie, like big thing that has a huge aspect in the movie. This is, the movie My Girl, starring Anna Chlumsky and Macaulay Culkin, and it's basically though about, Anna Chlumsky's, who lives at this, funeral parlor with her father. Her mother died right when she gave birth to her, so she never really knew her mother was only raised by her father, and kind of, Jamie Lee Curtis' character who comes in there to be the makeup girl on the dead bodies, and her and the father start kind of having this relationship, and it's about her friendship, Anna Chlumsky's friendship with Macaulay Culkin, and there's some really sad stuff that happens in this, but it's just a really good movie. It's all set in the 70s. It's a really good, cool movie. Like I always have been a fan of this movie. Always liked the second one as well. I know it wasn't great and always kind of had like kind of bad reviews and mixed opinions. But I hope Sony puts out a Blu-ray of this as well. To me, I thought it was pretty cool that they did because if you guys remember the DVD of this, it was one of those ones where there was like so many of those full screen editions. It was always really hard to find the widescreen one, and you always saw the Walmart $5 bins with the full screen one. That was all you could ever find. So now we finally have a widescreen, HD edition. Has on here a new commentary track with the writer and then some behind the scenes featurettes. The next one from Warner Brothers is the Flintstones and WWE Stone Age Smackdown. And this is actually the first Flintstones movie in like 10 or 11 years, or 11 or 12 years, something like that. There hasn't been a new Flintstone movie in years, animated one, or even live action or anything. I think it's kind of cool that, that Warner Bros. Has found a way to kind of bring back, their classic stuff, like doing more Scooby-Doo, because they did Scooby-Doo with the wrestlers, and but I kind of hope that it kind of brings into just doing more classic ones as well, because when I was watching this, I was kind of hoping it'd be more like a Flintstone adventure, you know what I mean, like more like that than WWE. But they did a lot of stuff. Even in the 70s, they used to do this kind of stuff, like Gilligan's Island versus the Harlem Globetrotters, and Scooby-Doo with the Harlem Globetrotters and Scooby-Doo and like other character spin-offs meeting Batman. It was kind of like the big thing to do. So it's kind of like a throwback to these kind of things. And one thing too I want to say about this movie too was it has really great animation. Like the animation, especially the backgrounds, really great work on the background work, really well drawn. But basically the concept is Fred ends up losing the money because he messes up something in the plant. So then he ends up having to find a way to raise money or get money so they can go on this family trip. And he comes up with this scheme of having Barney go into like the ring, and this is back before they even knew what wrestling was or anything. It was almost like the invention of wrestling almost. And he goes in there and kind of is raising, people are paying money to watch him fight in the ring, and like I said, they're hardly even fighting. It's kind of they're screwing around and they really don't even know what they're doing at the time. That's essentially what it is on here, and it has like 2 bonus cartoons and a featurette like talking about the wrestlers that were seen in this. But I thought this was actually not bad. I mean, I think a lot of kids would really like this one as well. The next one from Lionsgate is the Ewan McGregor, Brenton Thwaites movie. Brenton Thwaites was in The Signal, which I really love that movie, and The Giver, and a number of other things. I think Maleficent. But this is Son of a Gun. This is basically about basically about Brenton Thwaites' character who gets to jail. He's a young kid who gets sent to jail. They don't talk too much about what happened, but he's put in jail, and he's noticed there's another kid around his age in there that's kind of getting picked on, and terrible things are happening to him, and he kind of wants to try and help the kid, so he kind of stages a fight, tries to fight the kid, and it kind of backfires. But Ewan McGregor notices that he's trying to help this kid, and something terrible happens to the kid, and the bad guys start putting attention to him, the Brenton Thwaites character, and Ewan McGregor ends up helping him and kind of becoming friends with him and helping him in jail. Then it cuts to months later with them getting out, Brenton Thwaites character getting out and kind of being the guy who's now working for Ewan McGregor and kind of staging a breakout for him. And the goal is they want to end up, when he get him out of jail, to have this heist. But it's kind of like, he kind of finds out that Ewan McGregor's character isn't exactly as perfect as he thought he was and isn't as great of a person and things like that. But it kind of takes a turn to be more like a heist kind of movie. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was absolutely amazing or anything like that, but I thought it was pretty good though for the most part. Like I said, it kind of has that vibe of like a heist and things like that. The next one they said online too. I was reading a trivia about this. It's kind of like a Westworld kind of movie, and I do agree with that. It kind of has that kind of vibe, because Westworld was people who pay money to go to a place where it's animatronic, Western characters that are real human-like. And this one is Vice, and it's basically about this community where people go to live out their fantasies with these robotic characters that are basically, you wouldn't even know they were robots. You just think they were humans. And they wear these bracelets on their hands where at the end of the night, they, basically these robots can think and act and believe they're real. They know nothing about this and have, their own thoughts and their own opinions and things like that. But at the end of the day, they have this bracelet that kind of makes them forget everything they did. So every single day they're going and doing the same exact thing. And one day, one of the girls of the robots ends up malfunctioning and ends up, the thing isn't racing her mind, and she ends up escaping from this place, and it's about them coming after her, and Bruce Willis plays the head of the place, and Thomas Jane's character is basically investigating a murder that was in that place and then trying to find her. I thought it was okay. Like I said, it had those kind of cool movies about robots and that kind of stuff, and I thought it was actually pretty good, and one of the better, direct-to-video kind of Bruce Willis movies I've seen recently. The next one, this one is up for a lot of Academy Awards, and I thought Channing Tatum should have been nominated as well. I really thought he was good in this. This is a really well-acted character piece, and I feel like, too, I didn't know a whole lot about this, and certain stuff kind of got ruined, because, on some of the interviews, like Howard Stern, and stuff, and certain people were kind of talking about things that happened in the movie. And I know it was a story that people knew if they heard the news and things like that, but it was a while back, so I didn't remember this at all. So luckily enough, I didn't know kind of what happens in this movie going into it, but I think if you kind of didn't know anything about it, you might like it even more. Because to me, I thought that was kind of cool, not knowing anything. This is Foxcatcher, basically about Steve Carell, who's this eccentric millionaire guy who runs his pharmaceuticals company, lives with his mother, and is very, very odd. And he ends up kind of wanting to be a coach. So he ends up, bringing in, Channing Tatum's character, who is an Olympian. Years back, he won for wrestling, but he's kind of gone in hard times, and he's gotten kind of resorting to going to schools and kind of talking to them for $50, $25. That's all he can do to get money, and he kind of hopes of getting back to the Olympics, but doesn't really know how he's going to afford it or anything like that. And his older brother, who is coaching and doing pretty well at school as a coach, and Steve Carell wants to bring both of them in. Mark Ruffalo doesn't want to come in, want to leave his job, leave his family, but he ends up bringing in Channing Tatum to be basically with him. And Steve Carell wants to coach him. Steve Carell knows nothing about his character, knows nothing about coaching. He never really coaches at all. He just basically wants to say that he's this, and he wants to have this team, and he wants to get to the Olympics. That's kind of like the dream, is getting this team to the Olympics and making it like he's doing something. It's kind of about him and their relationship and the weird stuff that happens. I really like this. I think this was a really, really well-made movie. Like I said, after I saw this, I was really surprised with how much I liked it and how much of a cool movie this was. It also has the lead scenes in here and the story of Foxcatcher. The next one, and this one's been done for a while and has finally gotten a release. Because I remember, I think this was shot in 2011, the end of 2011 or the beginning of 2011, so it's been a really long time that this has been done. Because I think this is before Kat Dennings did even started doing the first season of Two Broke Girls. This is Kat Dennings, stars in the To Write Love in Her Arms, which is, I think made by the company that actually, has the group To Write Love in Her Arms, which is about like suicide prevention and about like depression and helping people and things like that when they can write to them and they get back to you and things like that. But it's about Kat Dennings' character who inspired this group, inspired the guy to create the group. And she was someone who, after high school, right after, she kind of resorted to drugs and took a really bad path, lost track with her friends. And it's, years too later, she's basically, hit rock bottom, is having terrible drug problems, and the friends end up helping her to get to rehab. She's not allowed to go right into rehab for like 7 days because they're like, well, you've been recently cutting yourself, and it will be bad for the other people here who are cutters, and to see someone like that, so you have to wait 7 days before you can come into rehab. It's about her and what happens those 7 days, about her old friends and this other guy that she met that's in a band. And I like this movie. I thought too it was a really good piece for Kat Dennings. I've never seen her really in a real dramatic kind of role like this, and she was really good in this. It's too bad that it didn't come out sooner, because I'm sure she would have gotten even more kind of dramatic kind of roles from people seeing this movie. Mark Saul, who is also in all that, the later seasons, is in this in a really big role. He was really good in this as well. The next one from Magnolia is really good. There's been a couple movies that have kind of been like this, but I thought this was one of the better ones in a long time. And I really like this one. It's Life Partners. It's about these two friends who are basically kind of goofing around and always kind of together and always, basically seeing each other every day. And then the one friend ends up, they basically have never had real luck with relationships. They've just never lasted, never been serious, so they've always been together and hanging out and things like that. And the one friend ends up finally meeting this guy, and it gets very serious, and it's about the other friend who is still dating these girls that are like, living with their parents and not really having any aspirations and are using drugs and all kinds of stuff. And it's kind of evaluating her life and things like that. And it's kind of about the one who's with the guy now, and it's getting serious, and they're not seeing each other, the friends, anymore as much at all. And she wants to hang out, but then they're out on dates and things like that. So it's kind of about the one friend, what's happening to her and her life and things like that when her best friend is now gone with somebody else. And that's basically what it is. Like I said, there's been other movies like this, but I thought this was just a really well-acted, sweet movie that I really liked a lot. Has on here, a behind-the-scenes featurette as well in the movie. The next one was an interesting story, and it's the director of this wrote the original Insomnia movie. They wrote, and they used his story too for the American version. This is Pioneer, and Wes Bentley's in this movie, and it's basically about the first group of people. It's a true story about the first group of people about going down and diving. It was like people diving super deep into the ocean, and deals with some really interesting stuff that I never knew anything about, where, when people would dive down, back when this first started, like, in the beginning of all this, they had to go in right after they got out in these depressurization tanks. And like now, if you do that, I think you're in there for like an hour or something before you can come out. Back then, it was like you had to go into these tanks for weeks for summer. I don't know why it was so long, but it was all this time. And it's about them going through a group of these explorers going through these experiments to finally hope to be able to go dive down deep on the bottom of the ocean. But there's all these experiments with gases and things like that, and things go wrong, and people die doing it, and they have to stay in the tanks. And it's basically about them just doing anything they can to be successful at this. It was a very interesting story and really well made, I thought. Like I said, too, I think a lot of people are going to see different stuff that they didn't know at all about that kind of stuff. The next one is from, Lionsgate. It was a Lifetime movie. This is a biopic. I thought it was a pretty well done one. But, when it comes to biopics, sometimes with the casting can be a little off. Like, I thought just some of the casting just wasn't absolutely perfect or anything like that. Just like with the last biopic I watched, that Lifetime did, the Brittany Murphy one, I thought the casting on that was a little off. It's the same way with this one, like with Missy Elliott's character and stuff. This is Aaliyah, the Princess of Pop, and I always remember, and I'm sure a lot of people remember the story about how her plane crashed right when she was, the head of everything right before Queen of the Dam came out, right before, she really hit it big. It was terrible what happened. But this is kind of about her life and about her early days and her start in the music industry and like how everything, went down and everything like that. Like I said, I thought this was pretty good, and people who are interested in, Aaliyah and interested in biopics would definitely like this. It also has on here, beyond the headlines, Aaliyah, the 1 hour special about her life. The next one from Olive Films. This was pretty cool. There was two people in this movie, Miguel Nunez and Tom Matthews, who are both together in Return of the Living Dead, and they actually shot this like a year later, a year and a half, something like that later. So it was like right after. So it was kind of cool. And John Stockwell is in this movie, who's kind of going on now to be more of a director. But he directed Turistas, which is one that I really liked a lot. For some reason, I used to always think that he made that movie that was like a found footage cannibal Holocaust movie kind of movie, but I don't think that was him for some reason. I used to think it was. I don't know why I thought it was the same guy. Turistas, though, was a really cool one. This is one of those movies that's kind of like a Savage Streets kind of movies. There's a lot of movies like this in the 80s about like in schools, about like the bad kids and then the other kids, and that's essentially what this was. It's kind of hard to explain a little bit. But it's kind of about like a group of these kids that are together, and they're like a gang of them, and they're all kind of like taking out the undesirables and things like that, and kind of like about recruiting John Stockwell's character and things like that. I thought it was pretty cool, but it's like I said, it's a cool, like real 80s kind of movie. Like I said, like a Savage Streets kind of vibe movie, and that's essentially what it was. The next one was an Eric Roberts one that I had never heard of. And it stars Dennis Hopper, and Dennis Hopper's in here doing this like interesting kind of like Irish accent. It doesn't really, it's not the perfect accent or anything like that, but that kind of made it interesting. And it's blood red, and it's about Dennis Hopper, who's this like, a guy who has all this money, who wants to, in the early days of building trains, he wants to build this train right through this town, but it's a town, where Eric Roberts and all of his, his family and everybody lives. And, they don't want any part of it. They don't want any money. They don't want this train coming to their town because basically they're going to lose their houses, going to lose their lands, and they're saying no. And Dennis Hopper sends in these kind of goon guys to go in there and pretty much take them out, make them leave the land, force them out of their land, regardless of what they say. And, Eric Roberts' father in the movie gets killed, and then it becomes kind of like revenge, and they're going to basically shoot out and things like that, keep them from, protect their land. And this, Julia Roberts was in this movie. This was, I think it was actually her very first movie ever, because the movie was shot a couple of years before it actually came out. So I believe this was her first ever movie. So it was actually a pretty cool, like, pretty well made, like, Western kind of revenge movie. The next one from Olive Films as well is Wild Orchid. And, this is director Zalman Kane, who started out mainly doing, as an actor, and then kind of went into doing like these erotic kind of films. But he was in one of my favorite movies, hopefully gets a Blu-ray release soon, Blue Sunshine, which is a great, like, weird movie about, like, the effects of LSD and stuff, and, like, it was a weird, creepy movie that Jeff Lieberman did. And this is, Wild Orchid. Reading online stuff about people, what they say about this movie, it's kind of like, what exactly is the plot of this movie? Like, what exactly was the meaning of the whole story? And it's like kind of those ones like I don't exactly know exactly what they meant with this movie, or like what they wanted the moral of the story to be. But it's about this woman who's like she's like a lawyer who ends up going to Rio de Janeiro to go there and meet up with Mickey Rourke's character about some kind of deal or something like that. And Mickey Rourke's character like talks real quiet with like this whispering voice the whole time, going, "I really like you, but I have a thing about being touched. I can't be touched. I just can't face it." And that's basically how he's talking, like real quiet the whole time. And it's kind of like him like really liking the lawyer character, and somebody's also notorious for like them saying, because Mickey Rourke and the lead actress were dating at the time, there's all this kind of like rumors, and no one knows for sure if the sex scenes in this movie were actually real. So that was one of those things that when this movie was first coming out, that everyone was talking about, about that. But I thought it was actually a pretty good, like, kind of erotic kind of movie. Wasn't like absolutely amazing, but I actually liked it a lot. Like, I thought that it was Actually had a really pretty good setting too with Rio, and kind of like when you could see though in the background though, like some of the places where they were at for the parties and stuff, you could kind of see like the people were kind of looking at the camera a little bit. It was kind of funny. The next one from Cinedigm is Listen Up, Philip, the Jason Schwartzman, Elizabeth Moss movie. And Jason Schwartzman is like, about him and his girlfriend Elizabeth Moss, and in New York City, and he's basically waiting for his new, he's written this novel that was successful, and he's kind of waiting for his new novel to come out, and he's got all the kind of publicity stuff he has to go through, and it's all, the movie was shot on 16 millimeter and has some pretty cool like narration. The narration is almost like narration for like an Animal Planet kind of thing or something, like an animal documentary, like the way they're talking about it. And Jason Schwartzman is like kind of curmudgeon-y and really upset about promotion, and doesn't really want to have to promote the new book, and doesn't want to have to keep talking about it, and it's kind of about him and his life and his problems with his girlfriend, and his problems where he lives, and his problem with people, and that's essentially what it is on here. And I thought it was pretty good. There's a lot of cameos in this too, with like some people have been in a lot of comedies and things like that. Like I said, I thought it was a pretty good one. The next one is Banksters, and this is kind of like an Office Space kind of movies, like those movies that are all kind of set in one place with cubicles and those kind of people all working together. And it's about Alan Thicke's character, who's the head of this like money firm thing, and he goes to this school to do like a to talk to these kids and things like that. Ends up meeting these two kids, and he ends up hiring them. It's kind of like their dream to work for someone like him. And as soon as they get there, then they discover that Alan Thicke's character is not a great person, and he's planning this like investment deal involving student loans, which is like crooked. And it's kind of about them doing anything they can to kind of stop it and kind of sabotage it. And they're kind of planning a heist and things like that. Like I said, it has like the Office Space kind of vibe with like the things that they're planning and stuff like that. It has on here, a commentary track. Behind the scenes featurette and things on here. Like I said, I thought this was a pretty funny movie, and Alan Thicke was kind of good as the kind of crooked boss in this. And the last one from 88 Films, put a thing over the cover just so no one said anything, and it's Stanley Long's film Eskimo Neil. And the thing that's pretty cool about this, I'll say too, 88 Films did a really good job cleaning this movie up. Really nice transfer in this movie. The lead in this movie is the guy who plays Veruca Salt's father in the original Willy Wonka movie, and he was really pretty cool in this because he was such a different character. He was real kind of sleazy, kind of totally different than he was. Similar, but almost like a more adult, R-rated version of Veruca Salt's father. Almost like when he left, that's what he did. This was his job, and he was working with these guys to kind of make a film. And they wanted it to be like a regular film, but then like the producers come on, wanted it to be like an adult porn film. And the one guy who's one of the writers, is a virgin, never had any real sex or anything like that, so knows nothing about actually trying to write this movie. So it's really weird him trying to write this, and it's about them trying to cast the movie and the awkward stuff about their family, trying to explain the kind of movie that they're making, and they're kind of like all the problems with trying to make this movie. It has on here, a new commentary track. And a bonus short on here. But I like this movie. It was a real 70s movie about making a movie, and I thought it was pretty good. So anyway, though, guys, that's all for this DVD Blu-ray update. If you guys haven't seen it yet as well, like I said, check out the new horror update. I'll see you guys later.